Hello, YouTube. How you doing? It's me. Excuse me. It's me, Miss J, North Dakota's trash queen of glam, geek, and gore. And here we are once again in the lovely Champagne Dreams Productions home office. How are we doing? Happy Monday. I am very excited. I took today off so that I would have an extended weekend. So this is day 4 of my 4-day weekend. Very excited. It's been good. I've gotten a few things done. I went to the farmer's market. Hung out with some friends. Some friends from Nebraska were up because their daughter moved up here for law school. I can't believe that my friend's daughter is old enough to go to law school. I was there when she was born. I was in college towards the end of my undergraduate, and yet I'm still a fresh-faced girl of 22. I don't know how that happens. I don't know how it happens, but it happened. So, and I went to my other friend's house for some fireworks and hanging out and that kind of stuff. And there was a little potluck, and I brought a cake, and it was a hit. And yeah, we had a good time. And they sent me home with some bars, and I just had a bar before we started this. So like, if I'm a little bit like I'm like a little bit salivating, that's why. But yeah, I just wanted to come on. This will probably be a quick one. I don't know if anybody will even stop by. We shall see. But I thought let's have a little conversation and talk about what I'm reading. So if you don't know, over on janessaj.com, my website, The World of Champagne, it is linked down in the description box. I have a tab on my website that is the bookshelf, Miss J's bookshelf. It is a collection of they're not even like full reviews. Some of them are a little bit longer. They're just kind of my thoughts on the books that I've been reading. Because the last few years, I have not had enough time / made enough time for reading. And that was something that I wanted to change. Not only because I was still buying books, even if I wasn't reading them, but because I do really love reading. And so I thought that might be a way to help keep me more accountable to making sure that I make time for reading. And I'm very excited because that section has been up on my website less than a year. And we are already at 12 posts. So that was, and some of them are like young adult novels. I've been rereading some of my Fear Street that are behind me here. But regardless, I'm not going to like put a whole lot of parameters on what kind of books, all that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to make sure that I was reading an average of a book a month. That's a minimum, right? Like I can go above that. And so since we're less than a year and we have a collection of 12 posts, that means that that I've already hit my my minimum goal for the first year. So very excited about that. And in fact, over this little weekend and the kind of week before this, I had been reading quite a bit. And so I have 3 new posts that are up, including one that went up today. Now, in our last book chat, we said that the next 2 books were going to be The Troop by Nick Cutter, because when I did that live, I was just finishing up or had just finished The Deep by Nick Cutter. And so we decided that this would be one of the books. And then the other book was A Game in Yellow. And so these 2 I did finish. So I have finished The Troop. This one I did really like. Now, again, you can see my little posts over on janessaj.com. But I really did like this one. I think I liked this one better than The Deep. It's about these 5 kids and their scoutmaster in Canada, kind of the eastern coast of Canada, where they're having kind of a wilderness adventure. There's this little island they're kind of like a coastal, it's Prince Edward Island. And so it's kind of like an island town. And then there's a little island off the coast called Falstaff Island. And it's pretty much deserted, but there's like a ranger cabin. And it's pretty typical. Every year, the scoutmaster takes the troop out for a wilderness weekend. And so they go to do that. And basically there is the hungry man comes to visit them, ends up on the aisle with them, and unleashes some problems. Some concerns. And what I loved about this was not only, I think the core story of like where the hungry man comes from and what his whole story is all about is very interesting, but also the 5 boys who make up the troop are also very interesting. It's 5 very different characters, the way that they are described and their family relationships and their sort of like mental, their point of view, because the point of view kind of switches from boy to boy throughout the story. And so I thought it was really, really, really well done. Another thing that I liked that I mentioned in my post is that He does something that's similar to Carrie. If you've ever read Carrie by Stephen King, that's my favorite Stephen King book. And I love that in between the actual just like POV chapters where we're like narrating the story of Carrie and what happens, there are these like official documents looking back on what happens, like looking back on the tragedy at the prom. So they kind of like give away some of the information, something is going to go bad. But he does that with this, where there's like court transcripts and official documents and like, a Vanity Fair article or whatever, like those kinds of things interspersed throughout the chapters that give you more information about the situation, what happened in the aftermath. So I thought that was really well done. Then we have this one, which CJ was very excited for, because this has to do, so this is called A Game in Yellow, and apparently this is based on, there is a short story collection by Robert W. Chambers, I believe is the name, called The King in Yellow, which is from like 1895, and it's this collection of horror stories, and all of them have to do with a cursed play called The King in Yellow. Now we get A Game in Yellow by Haley Piper, and this also has to do with the idea of there being this cursed play called A King in Yellow. But this one is more of like, it's very queer. It is a lesbian couple who are, open or polyamorous, and they're into like some BDSM play, and they're trying to like reconnect. So their relationship has become sort of disconnected. They're having trouble connecting sexually. And so they decide to bring in this third woman whose name is Smoke. And she has a copy of Act 2 of The King in Yellow. And it becomes this like aphrodisiac where the main character, Carmen, will read little sections of it and it'll reawaken her like lust and desire. And there's all this kind of stuff. So it's a really interesting sort of take on that sort of story, that sort of question about this supposed cursed play called The King in Yellow. And so this was really good. I really did enjoy this. I thought this was really fun. It's very steamy. If you have wanted to get into horror books, but you're not really sure, if you are into romantasy, so like the ones that are like fantasy books, but they're very steamy, like they're very sexual, this is very much like that. So, but except a horror twist rather than a fantasy. So if you like romantasy and you've wanted to try out some horror and you don't mind queer sexuality, it's not heterosexual at all in the least. And so if you are interested and you wanted to try something out, this could be a good book for that. The other one that I posted that just went up today is another Fear Street book. We finished book number 3, The Overnight. I detailed my thoughts a little bit more in the post. This one, I have to say, I didn't like as much as the first 2 that I read. There's just some things where it kind of falls apart, and maybe I'm just expecting more of it than I should expect from a young adult novel. There were some twists or potential complications that I thought could have made this more interesting. There's some things about this where the narrative kind of falls apart a little bit. And poor Suki Thomas. This is like the second time. I think she got mentioned in the last book, and she's much more of like an actual character in this book. But Suki Thomas is a side character in the Fear Street world. And every time they bring her up, she's very like punky. She's got like spiky hair. She's always wearing kind of punky clothes. And every time they talk about her, they have to bring up the fact that she's got a reputation, that she's kind of like a little bit fast. And so girls are always like mad at her because they think she's trying to steal their boyfriends and everything. And I looked through my books on the shelf to see if we ever got a book where Suki was the main character. And I don't think we ever do, which is a shame because she is kind of this interesting side character who shows up quite a bit, but always just being a little bit like low-key slut-shamed. So not great, but I do have my thoughts on this if you want to read it over on janessaj.com as well. So let's talk about some potential books. I think I have already picked out my next book. I think I know what I want to read next. It's been sitting here looking at me, and I've seen a few. I get a lot of, it's more on Facebook. I think they're TikToks, but I think they've been repurposed to Facebook. And it's this guy who talks a lot about different books that he loves, like horror books he loves and why. And then I've started to get other people who talk about books, and several people have mentioned this book, We Used to Live Here. This is another queer horror book. It's about a lesbian couple who flips houses. And at their most recent house, a family shows up and they knock on the door and they say that they used to live there and ask if they can come in and look around. And then apparently things get weird not too long after that. And one of the people in the couple disappears, and like the family isn't getting the hint that they're like they should leave, that they're overstaying their welcome, and things get creepy and weird. I've heard so many good things from several different like book talkers that I was like, you know what, we're gonna make this one the next one on the list. I've also got the next Fear Street is sitting here. This is missing, so we may do another Fear Street. Sometimes I like to have these as kind of a little palate cleanser. So we've got that, but we've got some other books that are still kind of in the running. If we want to talk about some more of those. One thing that I found, there's a fun bookstore. If you're in downtown Grand Forks, it's right across the street. Hello, Mama Champagne. Yes, we are talking about books. I was just at this place. It's called Witchwood. And they have a bunch of like independently published authors. I don't know if they're local, or I think some of them might be local or regional or something, but they have a bunch of like indie authors, but then they also have a bunch of used books. And I found the Marilyn Monroe Reader. I love Marilyn Monroe. My favorite of my like top 3 favorite movies, 2 of them feature Marilyn Monroe. My favorite movie in the world is Gentlemen Prefer Blondes with Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell. Love it, love it, love it. But also All About Eve is another favorite movie, and that features Marilyn Monroe in a very small part. And so I was like, you know what, this sounds really interesting. Wouldn't it be wild if, because I feel like I had this book at some point, I never got around to reading it, and I think I sold it on a rummage sale at one point. And then I saw this and I was like, I don't think I ever read that book, and I want it again. And so I hope I didn't rebuy my own copy of this back. I hope there's enough of these floating around Grand Forks that it just ended up back in my hands some other way. But very excited to kind of check that out. Another thing that I pulled out of my to be read pile that I think could be really interesting. This is called One Yellow Eye. And this sounded kind of interesting. So I'll just read the description. Kesta Shelley has just survived a major zombie epidemic that has left London ravaged. Having always preferred the company of microbes to people, Kesta has spent her life looking down the barrel of a microscope rather than cultivating personal relationships. But that changed when she met Tim, her cheerleader, her best friend, her absolute everything. So when he was one of the last people in London to be infected with the perplexing virus, Kesta went into triage mode. The government has already rounded up and disposed of all the infected, but Kesta is able to keep her husband unalive and hidden with resources from the hospital where she works. She spends her days reviewing biopsy slides and her evenings caring for him, but he's clearly declining. The sedatives aren't working like they used to, and his violent outbursts are becoming more frequent. As Kesta races against the clock, her colleagues start noticing changes in her behavior and appearance. She is withering away, self-medicating with alcohol, and has stopped attending her mandated ZARG, Zombie Apocalypse Recovery Group, meetings. Her care for Tim has spiraled into absolute obsession. There are whispers of a top-secret lab working on a cure, and Kesta clings to the possibility of being recruited like a lifeline. But can she save her husband for it before he is discovered? Or worse, will they trigger another outbreak? So I thought that sounded really interesting, and this has come out in paperback now, so I had gotten a good deal on the hardcover. I apparently got greasy. It's got one of those like covers that's got a little bit of a soft touch. So there's some greasy spots. That's classy. But so this is one that I think sounds really interesting. Now, because I read The Game in Yellow, which is about a cursed play, I did mention that I also have this book, A Play About a Curse, and I thought that could be a fun little mirror to have 2 different books about cursed plays. Enter Corey, a passionate young nobody, and her professor Maxine, an award-winning playwright and living legend of the American theater. When Maxine shatters Corey's dreams of artistic collaboration after graduation, Corey seeks revenge. At a clairvoyance den in a violet-lit Dallas strip mall, the young playwright unleashes a life-altering curse on Maxine. Possessed by dark powers and even darker ambitions, Corey follows Maxine to a prestigious playwriting residency in Chicago, where the women become fatally entwined. Through 3 acts, 2 interludes, and 1 curse, Corey pushes her mentor toward theater's haunted margins, where reality begins to crumble. So I think that sounds kind of fun. Yeah, I thought zombie stuff is not my favorite at all, but every once in a while, if there's something that's got kind of a different take, and I thought this sounded like a fun kind of love story. I do really like, if you're not sure about zombie stuff, there was a terrible, terrible, terrible movie made out of it. Do not judge the book by the movie, but World War Z by Max Brooks is really, really good. It's all of these, like, again, like official documents and transcripts, and it follows this like zombie plague and how the world deals with it. And it's very interesting. It's very well done. It's very well crafted. And I remember reading it a long time ago. But if you remember, after 9/11, there was the big like congressional investigation, and then they published like the 9/11 report, which was all of their like transcripts and hearings and like other evidence and all this kind of stuff. That book is like the 9/11 report if there was one about a zombie apocalypse. Like, it's really interesting and really well done. So that's one that I recommend if you're not really into zombie stuff but you want to kind of branch out. That's one that I think is really good. Another one that's still on my list is, this is Cody Blotter, one of our drag performers. I know I keep saying I'm going to read this. I do need to work it into the rotation at some point soon. Paleontologist Dr. Terry Carlson has spent her career unearthing the past to bury her own. On a routine dig in rural South Dakota, an accident fractures a sealed chamber and uncovers the impossible. Below the surface lies a thriving relict ecosystem. In a cavern hidden by time, evolution kept moving. At the top of the food chain is an apex predator that was never meant to survive. When a violent storm traps Terry's team underground, the fossils stop being specimens and start hunting. In the dark, science is useless. Survival is all that matters in this high-stakes thriller that blends the biological awe of Jurassic Park with the relentless trapped-in-the-sand terror of Tremors. So this is Cody Blotter, who is Cara Fiera. She's a local queen. She's from Minot. And I am very excited to read this. It's in my like immediate pile. Like, it's not even in the big pile. I've got kind of this small pile that I'm trying to get through, but then every time I read a couple, I add a couple more into the pile. And so I do want to get to this as soon as possible, but haven't had a chance to do that one yet. We do also have, I almost started this weekend, but I did the Game in Yellow instead. This is the trilogy from Stephen Graham Jones. He is an Indigenous author. I'm going to have to reread this. This is one that I've read before. I read a couple years ago. It's My Heart is a Chainsaw, but it is the first book in this trilogy. So it starts with My Heart is a Chainsaw. Then we have Don't Fear the Reaper and The Angel of Indian Lake. So if I'm going to read these, I'm going to have to reread the first one. And that's what I think stopped me, is I was like, I definitely want to read these, but since I need to reread one, I was like, I'm on a roll. Let's read new books that we haven't read before. So these are still very high on the list because I remember really liking this one. But I might have lent it to you. And so maybe I did. I can't remember. But I really, really like this book. And so I want to read this trilogy. And then, of course, we've got some Grady Hendrix. We've talked about how Grady Hendrix is one of my favorites. I've read a couple. We Sold Our Souls is about a cursed like punk band. And then there's My Best Friend's Exorcism, which they made into a movie that was fairly good on Amazon Prime. It was a pretty good adaptation. I mean, obviously, as with most of these situations, the book is better, but I do have the Final Girls support group. I have Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, and I have How to Sell a Haunted House. I might have one other Grady Hendrix that's in the big pile out in the living room, but these are the ones that are out and about. This one was in my office, and so I brought it home and I just put it into the more immediate pile. And then these are more recent purchases that I've gotten at Barnes & Noble on recent trips to Fargo. So those are some of the things I'm thinking about. If anybody has horror movie recommendations that you think would be really good, I'm always looking to add things to the list. And now that I'm actually getting through some things, as a typical book person, I've been trying to buy less books because I have such a stack, but I also know that the like to be read pile always grows faster than the read pile. But I'm like, if I'm knocking through some of these books, I don't feel too bad about if I read one, add 3 to the pile. I know it's out of whack. I know that it doesn't help me get caught up, but I'm like, that feels like a ratio that I'm okay with. So definitely, I think the next like horror book that I'm going to do is this We Used to Live Here. This is a book of essays, and because it's different, I know I've been complaining about how I don't have enough time to read, but then when I am reading, I sometimes am reading more than one book at a time, as long as they're different enough. Like if I tried to read A Game in Yellow and that Cursed Play book at the same time, I would have trouble because they're similar enough that I would probably have some bleed back and forth, but I should be able to read that book and then I can read a little bit of this, and probably if I have a day where I just want to have a little fluff, I can read a little bit of Fear Street. So those are kind of my immediate kind of to be read pile. But if anybody has any other thoughts about things after that, I'm going to see if I can do it. It'll probably be one of these two will show up next. I really do want to get to this, but this one doesn't feel as much horror. It's a little bit more like sci-fi. And I don't know, I'm just in the mood for horror. I think because we live in a horror show right now. I think we're all aware of that. Like, we're living in a bit of a horror show in the world. And so I haven't been able to watch as much horror because, like, horror movies, if I do, I tend to rewatch old stuff that I already know that I'm familiar with and I know that I love. I rewatched Cheerleader Camp not too long ago. I'm going to make a video about that. I did watch Scream 7. But in terms of just like watching a lot of horror kind of widely, I haven't been able to do it. I just am like, I need more of my like comfort shows and stuff. But for some reason, books, I have no trouble reading horror books. So because I've been watching less horror, I've been wanting to read more horror. So that's kind of, I think that's why this keeps getting knocked down, because there are other more like horror books that keep making it to the top. So... But that is my live. That's all we were going to talk about. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you have any book suggestions, any horror books that you think are really, really good that you think I should read. Also, I've got some Dark Shadows books, some Dark Shadows novels that were written by Laura Parker. I have been thinking about picking up one of those at some point. I thought that could be kind of fun. We'll maybe add that in somewhere because I'm very excited. I love Dark Shadows. I talk about Dark Shadows fairly often. I haven't talked about it for a little while, but I just saw something, and of course everybody sent it to me. I think Mama Champagne, I think you maybe sent it to me, but there is a company, it might be Warner Brothers, that's working on an adult cartoon, adult animation cartoon of Dark Shadows. So I'm very excited. There's new Dark Shadow stuff, so it might be a good time to pick up one of those Laura Parker books. I don't have much interest in anything dystopian since we were yeah, that's why I have not been able to watch The Handmaid's Tale. I know how good it is, and I've watched every once in a while, like clips will come up. So like, I don't mind spoilers usually. And so I have watched lots of clips and I know a lot of the stuff, but I tried watching it during the first Trump administration, and I watched the first episode and I was like, nope, have to stop. And this administration is worse. Like, this second administration is way worse. And so I just am like, no, it's feeling too much like a documentary. I can't handle it. Like, little clips where I just watch a little bit, it like gets the endorphins running, but it's such a like slow burn show. That first episode just like had me on edge, and I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I think like slow burn for me works for a movie because it's a set amount of time. And so what happens with a slow burn is that it takes a while to get into it. And there's little bits that are dropped here and there. And you're like, what's going on? But eventually it's going to kick off and you know you're done in 90 minutes, 2 hours, whatever it is. When it's a show and it's just like a constant sort of slow burn with these then little eruptions, it just wrecks my nerves. I can't do it. So I have not been able to do... Yeah, the book is creepy. It's been quite a few years since I read it. I've thought about rereading that, but even I'm just like, oh. Part of me thinks I should be watching The Handmaid's Tale to get like tips for the revolution. But yeah, I just haven't been able to. So, but yeah, so that's what's going on. So I'm sure if you haven't checked out JanessaJ.com in a while, go check it out. There's some newish galleries. There's new posts in the bookshelf. There's a bunch of new stuff. There's some things in the blog. If you haven't, this is not about horror, but I did an article about Cougar Town because for some reason I watched it a while ago. I don't know what made me go back and start thinking about it again, but I wrote a thing about Cougar Town and some interesting sort of dynamics of that. So check out what's on JanessaJ.com and look for bookshelf entries coming soonish, hopefully, about We Used to Live Here, about the Marilyn Monroe Reader, and about Missing from the Fear Street series. That's my new to be read pile. So hello, Alex. We're just wrapping up. Hopefully you had a good day at work. I'm off work today. I took an extra day off so I could extend the weekend. Also, if you're interested, I am having a July 4th, but late sale on my jewelry. It's over on Facebook. My Facebook is linked down in the description box below. And my Facebook is public. So even if you're not on Facebook, you can open it and take a look. But I'm having a sale on my current inventory of jewelry where everything, if you buy 2 or more pieces, each piece will be $5 off. And I also have some mystery bags. I have 3 mystery bags of some of my older pieces that I still have in inventory. And I put them into I've done these mystery bag things before. And you get 3 necklaces for $50. And there are 3 themes. There are neutrals, colorful, and whimsical. So there are 3 different mystery bags. The mystery bags are $50 for 3 pieces. And then, like I said, all of the regular inventory is, if you buy 2 or more, it's $5 off. Shipping is extra. 1 to 3 items is $15 shipping. 4 to 5 items is $20 shipping. And if you buy 6 or more items, and that includes buying mystery bags, the shipping is free. So the mystery bags, that $50, that counts as 3 items. If you buy 6 items or more, you get free shipping. So that is over on my Facebook. If you want to check that out, it's linked down below. All of my current inventory is over there. And yeah, so let's see if I remember my outro. Don't forget, if you are here in chat, I would love it if you would circle back around and leave your comments down below. Help me feed the algorithm. Help me feed the beast, Seymour. While you are down there, don't forget that you can give me that thumbs up to tell me that you appreciated the video. Or if you are like, girl, what are you doing reading all these scary books? Like, it's a scary time. You should read some happy, cheerful things. Go ahead and give me that thumbs down. It is all engagement. The algorithm isn't a picky bitch, and neither am I. And while you're down there, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We already did the thumbs up. Now we're hitting the subscribe button, and hit that bell icon and switch it to all so you'll be notified every time I go live and do an upload. I try really, really hard to make sure I have at least 1 live or video per week. There was a new video yesterday, a new Get Ratchet With Me featuring Trixie Cosmetics and Morphe. And I try to spread it out among Glam, Geek, and Gore. And sometimes, if you're lucky, if you're very lucky, you might even get a bonus video. Ooh, horror fiction-orific. If you'd like to chat, banter, or commiserate between uploads, all of my social media will be linked down in the description box below, including a link to my website. Just pretend it's there, The World of Champagne at JanessaJ.com. Thanks so much for watching. I love and appreciate Mama and Alex for being here. Thanks. We appreciate you. If you are in or around Grand Forks, July 25th, we're going to have Drag Brunch and Bingo at the Empire Theater. Definitely come check that out. It'll be me and special guest Micah. And yeah, I hope everybody's having a lovely day. I hope you had a good holiday weekend. I know I sent a few people, I was like, happy maybe 249 years was enough and we should ask the English to step back in day. I was like, that's how I'm feeling about the holiday. But any chance I get to take off work, I'm happy for it. So I've been having a good time away, but tomorrow's back to work. So anyway, I love and appreciate all of you. And until I see you again, bye. And now the awkward ending of the stream. There it is. Okay, bye.